believe she is joining us virtually.
I am on here.
In 2 miles,
Thank you.
right lanes to exit right to I-70.
Mr. Smith? Yes. Ms. Devine? Here.
Yes, here. If you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would now accept a motion to adopt our agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Ms. Savage. Roll call.
Mr. Smith? Yes. Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Luke?
Yes.
Ms. Powers?
Yes.
Fine.
Yes, motion carries. Next, well, we've got an excellent presentation. I'm really excited about this. We have a lot of state qualifiers to recognize, and Mr. Langhouse has graciously agreed to share those names with us. We've got a video here to highlight all of this wonderful achievement.
Oh, good evening, everybody. Let's jump right into these outstanding achievements by our students. We'd like to start off with the 2021 National Merit Finalist, Sean Richardson. 2021 National Merit Semifinalists, Catherine Kruger and Megan Mellish. A big congratulations to our 2021 boys wrestling team, the members of the all academic Ohio team. Congratulations. 2021 boys wrestling state qualifiers, Ben Bickerstaff, Jack Gola, and Zach McMinn. 2021 boys wrestling team members who made the state podium. Congratulations to Lincoln Hurd, Colton Powers, and Earl Will. Congratulations 2021 indoor track members, Jackie Richlick and pole vault, Bryn Richlick, pole vault, our 4x800 relay team of Ava Elliott, Emerson Bausch, Katie Kruger, and Bryn Holtham. Also, congratulations to Bryn Richlick, second place in the state pole vault with a 12 feet 6 inches. Also, congratulations, 2021 State Bowling Championship, Madison Strauss. 2021 OASSA State Cheer Championship, a third place by our cheer team. Congratulations.
Are you going to go through their names? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry
Yeah,
about
that's
that.
okay. Just didn't want
Chloe
to miss-
Bashnagel, McKenna Boger, Ella Crane, Taylor Fenby, Monica Lamb, Ireland Lyon, Aylin Martin, Ellie Palmero, Julie Patterson, Lizzie Robles, Grace Stevens, Riley Tigner, and Ella Weller. Congratulations. The DECA International Competition of 2021. Big congratulations to Mackenzie Kempton for her outstanding achievement. Also, state qualifiers in the DECA competition, Madison Andrews, Brandon Basinger, Emma Boger, Olivia Davis, Ashlyn Etherington, Kaden Hogan, Adria Hosco, Ellie Martyr, Isabel Razor, Shay Saygraves, Savay Sherrick, Sarah Stooksbury, Cody Swain, and Jalen Young. Also to some additional DECA state results, congratulations to Foster Cross, Ray Singh, and Rowan Singh. With our FFA program, FFA state and American degrees were earned. Congratulations to Taylor Burnham, Maria Kessler, Blake Kessler, and Grant Kessler. State competition placers, as you can see here, well represented. Congratulations to Taylor Burnham, Maria Kessler, and Daniel Snodgrass. And again, with our FFA program, state placers continue. Congratulations to Maria Kessler, Megan Moray, Maya Olson, Skylin Roberts, and Kayla Thomas. As we continue with our state placers, another congratulations to the Ag Technology and Mechanical Skills team of Lane McCormick, Mason Quick, Emerson Trapp, and Matthew Volrath. The Ag Sales team, Taylor Burnham, Chloe Gordon, Mason Quick, and Skylin Roberts. And now we move to our Japanese team who competed in the Ohio Japan Bowl of 2021 with a level 2 placing Nicole Gadang and Olivia Elliott. And earning level 3 was Cassandra Drum, Blair Fairchild, and Keegan Mulligan. In the Ohio Japanese Speech Contest, congratulations to the following students for their achievements: Keegan Mulligan, Grace Hackett, and Meadow Kellicote. All right, there was a long list of great achievements by our students that we're very proud of.
Well, yeah, I think they deserve a nice round of applause. Yeah, we certainly miss not being able to shake all of their hands and congratulate them in person, but hopefully we'll be able to do that at some point. I know I'm thrilled to see both academic and extracurricular qualifiers. Just so proud of our students and obviously all the teachers and coaches, advisors, parents, and volunteers really do make us proud to be Monarchs. At this point, do we have any public participation this evening? Nope. I'll just double check.
I also did check the form on the
Emails,
website.
right.
And then we went ahead and shut that down at this point.
Okay.
But I went ahead and checked.
Okay, great. Then we are ready to move on to our reports. We'll start with our superintendent's report.
No High Point report.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. We will start with the High Point report. Sorry
That's
about
okay.
that. Man,
That
didn't
seems
mean
different.
to jump over that.
Okay, just a few quick things from High Point. May 21st is the High Point convocation, and it'll be at 4:30 at Bell Fountain High School, and that's all the kids that go to High Point from the different high schools come together for a joint convocation, and then they have their own high school graduations in addition to that. Construction is really the word of the day. They've started on the block wall construction and removal of the old cooling towers and installation of the new. So it's very much a construction area moving into the end of the school year and all summer long. So that'll be great to see next fall. A lot of the work should be completed by the fall.
Good.
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Now we're ready for the superintendent's report.
Great. Okay, so we've been back in session 5 days a week and everything has gone really well. Super pleased to have kids back. I think the 4-day transition made running into 5 days pretty easy for us. I wanted to give you some testing highlights. The ACT wrapped up before spring break. Grades 3 through 12 virtual academy testing started before break and then continues on the next couple weeks with math and science and social studies. ELA started before break. In person, grades 3 through 12, the ELA window opened on April 9th and it closes on the 29th. Math, science, and social studies opens on April 20th and closes on May 11th. So we did send a letter out on Sunday, just reminding everyone to keep things in perspective. We want kids to just give their absolute best effort, but certainly we don't want stress to be put upon kids. We know that we're just getting back into the swing of things. So just a reminder to us all that all we can expect is our kids to do their best, and I'm sure they will. COVID experience, it remains low. Our score was at a 10 when I looked earlier today, 0 staff cases, and we have 2 quarantines and then 7 student cases and 10 quarantines. Currently, we're working with the health department to potentially do on-site testing. That has really just evolved in the past 24 hours. They're looking at next Friday. So Kim Jude is working on a survey to gauge interest of our high school age students. It would be done at one location, and as long as it's done at a school, that negates the need for a parent to be present. Certainly the parent has to consent. So we're trying to work out those logistics as we speak. So we'll be working with the health department to try to offer that as well. I also wanted to take a moment to provide a little bit of clarity on some new orders that came out. This is my narrow understanding, but when a new set of orders come out, old orders have to be rescinded in the process to trump the, so the new order can trump it. And so there was some confusion maybe that maybe masks weren't required anymore, because there is an order out that actually rescinds the mask mandate, but then there's a new order saying that you do have to wear a mask still in indoor spaces, schools, blah, blah, blah. So just to provide a little clarity, and I did forward all of you an email from Jason Orsina speaking to that idea. There was a housing meeting since we were last together. As you know, Todd and I have been talking at length with the city and county and chamber really about the importance of a diversified housing approach in Union County. And we're glad that they're including us in those conversations. Certainly, I think the school district has a little bit of reservation around multiple apartment complexes coming into the community. Todd and I have talked with them at length. They are very supportive of the reasons and understanding of our reasons. But at the end of the day, we also understand creating a strategy to support our workforce. So it's kind of 2 different interests, I would say. So we're trying to work through just those discussions and understandings to make sure that we're all on the same page and there's open lines of communication as we continue to move forward. As we have discussed before, another community meeting that we've been involved in is solar farm meetings. To date, there's been very little progression, I would say, in our meetings. It's more informational opportunity for some people to share questions, concerns. I think as a school district, more than once, we've brought up the idea of partnerships and workforce. If the solar farms are in fact going to be established and pushed forward, we'd be interested in potential partnerships for our differing programs at the high school and maybe middle school level. So I would just say continue to stay tuned with that. Certainly there are a variety of opinions on that topic, and we're not really a part of that conversation, as more just understanding where they're going, if they're in our school district, and some of those pieces. I sent to you late today a communication about prom. If I would have sent you a communication yesterday, it would have looked different, so I'm glad I waited. A survey was sent to students about their preference, maybe doing like a casino night at Bridgewater. Understand that Bridgewater is in a different county, so we have to follow the guidelines of that county, not our own county, when we're looking at that transition. They also gave kids a choice, a second choice to do it at the high school. And really the collective vote was very close. So the decision really was made to do a 2-phase prom night. One is a junior time slot, and the other is a senior time slot on the same day. If your date happens to be in the other grade level, you make a choice which one you're going to. There are some pretty strict guidelines. So you're asked to come in to team up in a group of 10 would be the easiest way I could explain it. And then there will be quadrants within the facility, the field house, in order to keep groups of 10 together. There will be dancing allowed within that group of 10, but that also speaks to the larger idea of contact tracing and being able to identify if one person in the 10 ends up positive, as opposed to if one person at the larger dance is positive, how you're possibly going to contact trace that. So there's a very detailed letter sent out. We're using it, from my understanding, we're using a ticketing system that notifies of your responsibility. You can put your 10 people in that system. My understanding as well is a color-coded type system. Several other school districts are doing something similar. So we'll look forward to that, hopefully going off without a hitch. I think it's a huge undertaking, but I really appreciate the high school administrators and staff trying to put something on for students. So
last year, there was not an option
correct.
to even hold a prom. And so I know as people get this information, they may look at it and kind of throw up their hands a little bit, but it's difficult to try to thread the needle, such as it is, to try to make sure that the kids get the experience of having a prom and being able to enjoy the company of their friends, be able to celebrate, you know, their lives and the school, and also have, as you said, the ability to reasonably contact trace if someone becomes positive, and to try to make sure that we have a safe environment so everybody can come, have a good time, and then be healthy for graduation, which is coming up shortly after that.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. Because
Yeah, and end of year just activities. We talked about, you know, FFA banquet, the track team, and baseball and softball team entering tournament time. You sure would hate for something that happened to prom
oh, yeah.
impact their ability to have their end of year events or participate in graduation or any of those types of things. So I do think they've really worked diligently to hear and try to come up with the best solution. Is it going to make everyone happy? No, but I think it is providing an opportunity. We do realize that some families have organized their own things at their houses. We understand that as well, but we certainly hope that the kids can come together and come to prom and make it a special, unique year.
Right. Yep.
I wanted to give you, it's this time of year, believe it or not, a registration update. So Alt K, currently we have 34 students registered. Last year at this time we had 49. So we're a little bit down. Kindergarten, we had, currently we have 307 students registered. Last year this time we had 284. So a little up. As Jonathan will tell you, those numbers continue to ebb and flow as we move into the year. So I'll continue to do those updates during the spring. Just a general update on our enrollment. Currently, we have 5,184 students. Last May, we have 5,149. So we are up a little bit. Included in that number is we still have 874 students operating in the virtual academy. The virtual academy, I wanted to give you a brief update. This morning, I met with the other two superintendents from Union County. We are now going to start planning and looking at the opportunity to do a combined Union County virtual academy. We did a survey a couple weeks ago of our current virtual academy, all the districts did, to say, hey, how interested are you in staying in this format? Did it work well for your family, type of thing? And about a third of our students responded that they would still be interested. And I can't remember the other two districts' numbers, but I think collectively we felt like we had the opportunity to share our resources and put something better together for families. And so we met this morning, kind of looked over those survey results, and we'll start we're having a team meeting next week, including kind of our curriculum leads, to start to pursue that, come up with a communication plan, hold some community meetings. So stay tuned for all of that as we move into next year.
I think that's really exciting to hear that. I think, just
Yeah.
those ongoing opportunities for our kids to learn the way that works best for them.
Yeah, we definitely heard from some families, like mom and dad travel for work, and we received a lot of feedback about this was an opportunity for our family to go on those trips, and my student didn't have to miss out on mom and dad or the experience of school. So we tentatively were looking at 6-12. We all were very uncomfortable with K-3. And then had the larger conversation about maybe we just start on that 6-12 and get it going and see how that goes. And maybe in a year or down the line, we'd look to move down if it seemed to fit. And I think everyone felt a little more comfortable with that approach. Excuse me. So stay tuned on that. We do consider it to be a blended model. So, for example, and again, this is a brainstorm. This is nothing ink to paper, but maybe Monday is Marysville Day. So the staff would be in Marysville. So if kids had issues or families needed support or whatever, there would be a space where that could take place. And then maybe Tuesday is Fairbanks Day, Wednesday is North Union, and maybe Thursday and Friday are by appointment or something like that. So stay tuned on that. But we do want to create the opportunity for families or kids that might need support to get it.
There are two things that along the line that you're talking that I really like. One is that this fits in perfectly with our personalized learning approach. Whatever individual instruction a student needs, we're going to try and make sure that we give them that personal touch. And the second thing is that even though it's virtual, there may be a time when parents, the student, want to come in. They want to be able to get a hold of somebody, sit down, get a little more personal instruction with a specific problem, or maybe just going through some questions and things in a more personal way. And I like the fact that might end up being a part of what we're looking at. I think that's great.
Yeah, we're excited. We talked about shared resources and figuring out, we'll probably have to do an MOU between the districts, but our students would stay Marysville students, Fairbanks students would stay Fairbanks students, and et cetera. So it's not like they're open enrolling here, and we try to make some of those lines pretty clear. But what we look to do is just make it a balance. So, if we have, let's say we had the administrator, then they would each pay 2/3 to Marysville to cover that cost, or maybe they're offsetting that cost in a different way. So those details haven't been worked out in particular, but we're headed that direction.
Nice.
Now, certainly, we will match the people who responded to the survey to their success this year. And we talked a lot about if students didn't engage in that format, we're not going to tell them necessarily, no, you can't do virtual academy, but these are the conditions and the success plan that we want to see from you. And it might be mandatory that you're coming on the blended days. So everyone would kind of have that same personalized learning, personal approach in that format.
Yeah, I agree. I think there has to be an accountability with the student and with the parents that ensure that the goals, you're working toward the proper goals and you're working in the proper way. So,
Still focusing on student achievement.
yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, also, I wanted to give you a brief update on the gym renovation. There's currently a fundraiser happening with the floor that's been removed, the wood floor that's been removed. And so that is underway. That I do know that we're working on the final design plan for the floor. So if you're at the high school, you can stick your head in there and look. It looks a little different. So we made some decisions about the new ventilation system. So if you're familiar with the gym, there's the very large, that will be non-existent anymore. So very, very excited to see some of those changes. Maybe next meeting I can have some pictures for you.
Okay.
And share.
So do you know where you go to find out about this floor fundraiser? Is it just all on social media or?
Joey did put it out on social media, but if you had questions or did not see that, you could certainly email the athletic director directly.
Yeah,
There's
I
a
know-
variety of sizes that you can purchase.
Yeah, that air handler up there, just getting the noise out
Yeah.
of the room
Right.
will make a huge difference.
Okay, and then I sent to you early this morning kind of some video recaps directly from the principals highlighting their plans. And you can kind of, I thought each one did a pretty nice job about talking about the process and some input loops. And the high school and middle school are still finalizing some dates. But you can kind of see those 3 pillars that we talked about. They focused on the entire time. So I did have Ashley put together a video that we'll queue up here. An overview of all of them in one place. I thought that might be a little easier than each video.
We wanted to take a moment to up you on our summer extended learning opportunities at Marysville schools and how the plans have continued to gain refinement as we've moved through the school year. Our 3 goals have remained the same. We want to provide academic support, enrichment, and make sure we're staying true to our commitment to stay connected and promote social emotional wellness. The 3 formats that we're really planning around include asynchronous opportunities in which students can work remotely and at home, synchronous learning opportunities in which students come to our schools and work on site with teachers and staff, and blended opportunities, which are a combination of both of the above. Just to give you an overview, elementary teams have worked together with teacher input, stakeholder input from the community, and admin collaborative teams to come up with asynchronous opportunities in which students who need flexibility to work from home can engage in a summer reading program in which they track what they're reading and potentially win prizes for their accomplishments. There are also 4 weeks in June in which students can come to our buildings 4 days of the week to engage in both enrichment and academic support, in which reading and writing will be embedded throughout a science-based theme each week. Creekview is also planning for asynchronous engagement in which students can flexibly engage with their learning in reading and math through their personalized lesson pads and iReady. In addition to that, they would be encouraged to meet with their teacher weekly for check-ins and further academic support and connectivity. Synchronously, Creekview is planning a targeted boot camp in which they invite students who have academic risk that are incoming 5th and 6th graders. So they have the opportunity to take a few weeks in August to have a boost before school starts to get back in the swing of things. Creekview also planned activities all summer in which students can enrich their learning and engage with high interest projects or clubs to stay connected to school and peers. Bunsold Middle School is taking an integrated approach in which they have collaborated with BASE to engage in academic support and enrichment with Bunsold students who are currently in 7th and 8th grade between the dates of June 1st and June 24th. Students would be invited to join their Bunsold teachers and peers to engage in half a day in which they get support in reading, writing, and math, and also can take on high interest projects that is run in cooperation with BASE staff. The high schools are looking to make sure we have opportunities for students to engage in credit recovery and recovery of skills or standards not yet met in early summer. That will be planned in June. And there are also opportunities being planned to bridge students, especially incoming freshmen, back to school in August. Similarly, there will be blended enrichment opportunities for students to really get creative with their future goals. And they are going to work at ECHS through an anchor text called Designing Your Life. And there are opportunities to work through career-based projects, learning how to write a resume, and maybe even planning half credit courses in which they present projects and learning that occurred over the summer. More information is to come about each of those plans. We are right now getting ready to send out surveys to students and staff to engage in recruitment for participation and planning. We're also working with transportation, food service, and IT to make sure that the resources we need are on hand for both asynchronous and synchronous learning opportunities. We will present other information as we get closer to implementation. And I also wanted to take a moment just to provide a chart that sort of maps out the summer at each grade band. We have worked through planning, as you saw in the slides, that embed support and enrichment together through things like STEAM Camp, the summer reading program, targeted intervention, high interest passion projects or enrichment clubs, integration with Base Camp, which is an already standing platform for students, and flexible opportunities to think creatively about designing passion projects, as well as engaging credit recovery for those students who have needs. So as these start to refine and we get closer to implementation, we will continue to update you on plans for all students to engage in Marysville schools.
Okay, well, I know just in reading the building notes this month, I know that we're already doing a lot of after-school tutoring. We've been blessed to have a lot of volunteers in our staff that are willing to do that. So I guess I was able to watch a couple of those videos, and I know that there are some targeted students that they are looking at, but for the most part, is this available for anyone?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and again, a little bit dependent on so if you're a student
Right.
who wants to do a passion project or come to the STEAM camp,
Right.
You're welcome to do that. So it is open. So there, after this presentation tonight, principals are going to start sending out information to gauge interest from families. And probably the elementaries will be first in that process. So that we can also then look at staffing or volunteers or
Right.
anything else we need to support. So we also did receive, I think I already told you, COSI kits. So that will be a part of STEAM Camp as well.
Great. I know Base has already used, they have a COSI kit recently, I think, or project or something
That's
like that.
separate than the ones the
Yeah.
district received, but yes, same
Okay.
thing.
Great.
So, yeah,
Great.
so we're pretty excited. We're looking at, I think one of the principals mentioned in their video, some of the parents think that we'll have a lot of high interest. So we're trying to gauge that with staffing and,
Right.
possible need for some volunteers from the community. But that was one of our goals as well, to kind of just reconnect ourselves and establish ourselves with
Right.
the community through that process.
Transportation could be a part of that as well.
Transportation will happen.
Okay.
Things we talked about in that meeting today were, we'll probably have elementary and Creekview, either in the same building or use Creekwood and Northwood so they're close,
Right.
instead of maybe Naven and here. So transportation will be an option, food service will be an option. It's just refining what that exactly will look like.
Diane, will there be any fees or charges for this? Or-
No, we'll be using our ESSER dollars to help offset costs for that.
And those students that are at risk, I think Ashley said they're invited. Does that mean that it's optional, or was that just a polite way of saying that some of them will have to do it?
We can't require someone to attend. We're going to highly recommend that they attend for different reasons. So if they're not, as we move through this last cycle of assessments at the end of the year, kids that have had maybe double deficits, triple deficits, will be engaging with those families to recommend they come. The idea really is to have STEAM camp and then pull some students out for that intervention and then let them cycle back in. So it's not as seen as much or considered as much as you're going to summer intervention. You're going to come to camp and get pulled out and serviced in different ways.
That's pretty exciting stuff, I think.
Yeah,
Really,
we're pretty
and
excited.
I love the process that they've been working through, because I did hear in that video, they really got, sounds like they're getting input from a lot of different places.
We
so.
did have, so that their first round was really working with their staff to kind of, everyone kind of had a different style to get where they wanted to go. Some went with the framework and let staff fill that in, and then the plan evolved out of that, or some started with staff. And then last week we had a large superintendent's advisory committee, and they broke out into breakout rooms based on where their student attended, and gave feedback to that principal, and then made revisions to the plan once again.
Good.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Treasurer report.
So I'll be presenting the May 2021 5-year forecast update. Go to the next one, please. So there's been, since the last 5-year forecast that we had back in November of 2020, there's been significant improvement, significant change to the 5-year forecast, most of which was actually COVID related. This slide here, the green line shows our ending cash balance, which is one of the district cash balance policies, is to have an ending cash balance greater than 1% of expenditures. And you can see, or exceed, of greater than 1% of revenue, I'm sorry. And you can see there that with this updated 5-year forecast, that green line is positive throughout the 5-year forecast. And that is a change compared to November. Back in November, you would have seen that line at the end in fiscal year 25 was actually showing negative. So we've actually boosted that positive cash balance by an additional year. So that was great news. You can still see, though, the blue and red lines above, the red lines being expenditures, the blue lines being revenue. That you still see that gap, which gets bigger and bigger throughout the forecast of expenditures exceeding revenues. And we'll talk a little bit more about that on another slide, where we're just really not seeing revenue growth. And actually, you can see that blue line actually is declining. So actually seeing some revenue declines. Next slide, please. So again, this next slide, again, the dotted line there is the same thing as the green line on the previous slide, where it's showing our ending cash balance. The bar graph, though, is showing our revenues versus expenditures, which is another part of our cash balance policy. And you can see there in fiscal year 22 is where we start to have expenditures exceeding revenues by more than 1%, which is not in line with our cash balance policy. This is actually the same as it was back in November, where it was the same year we were starting to have expenditures exceeding revenues. But the good news is the rate at which expenditures were exceeding revenues has decreased by approximately $2.5 million in each of the out years. So that gap has decreased, which means we're not eating into that cash balance as quickly. So looking at our revenue sources for this year, how they came in compared to our original estimates, the percentage of state versus local really didn't change much. But as we talked about in November, that percentage on a year-by-year basis is slowly getting more towards the local side, having a heavier burden compared to the state, which is we're not seeing those increases anymore. And obviously we talked back in fiscal year 20, our state revenues were cut by $1,030,000 due to the downturn in the economy with COVID. We were back in November, we were experiencing that exact same cut with our state revenues being reduced by an additional $1 million. But in January, due to the economy rebounding, those cuts were partially restored. So that led to an increase in our state foundation funding compared to November, as well as the casino tax revenues rebounding as the economy started to open back up. Our casino tax revenues came in higher than they were projected back in November as well. So that led to an increase in fiscal year 21 of state foundation of state revenue in total. But it's not a number that really carries through the forecast because it was really just a 1 year change. There was really no change so far in the projected state funding. Real estate tax revenue is up $575,000 in this forecast, due mostly to delinquencies, commercial delinquency that was paid in this year. So basically that's money that should have been received last year, but was received this year instead. So again, that's mostly a change that affects fiscal year 21 that does not carry through the forecast. Although you will see that the projected real estate tax revenues did go up in each of the out years due to a valuation increase, but just not nearly at the rate that you might have expected based on this delinquency. Other revenue increased. We're looking at an increase of around $275,000 compared to November. The biggest factor with that increase are Board of Revision settlements with commercial entities, and that's where we've talked in the past, where businesses may, ask the BOR for a reduced value, and we basically make sure that request has valid data to back up the request, and if it doesn't, we may ask for an appraisal, and oftentimes that leads to somewhere meeting in the middle, or maybe even no change at all, depending on if they have any valid data or not. So that some of those appeals have led to settlements that increased our other revenue line. And then one very significant receipt that increased our revenue this year is a $795,000, what was called a dividend from the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. I think in essence, the BWC had a big surplus of revenue, and the state legislature used that to kind of pay back schools for the lost state foundation revenue. So it was kind of an offset for that. So in total, for fiscal year 21 alone, our revenue increased by $2.3 million. So obviously a very significant increase. Next slide, please. So again, as I mentioned, the big change in revenue was mainly to fiscal year 21. The out years did not change nearly as much. And as we talked about prior in November, you're seeing the gap widen of local revenue versus state, where the local residents or our local taxpayers are, being asked to carry a little higher burden compared to the state foundation revenue. For fiscal year 22, we're still projecting state foundation funding to basically revert back to what we were paid back in fiscal year 19. That's in line with what the governor so far has proposed in his budget. We still got a long way to go before we'll know what the actual budget is as the Senate and the House work through that. We should know in June what the state funding will actually be. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about the cut Patterson, and that's still in play, which could potentially lead to increased revenue. But I think what we've seen most likely so far is that if it is approved, it would probably be something that's phased in. So I wouldn't anticipate huge gains on an annual basis, but it could lead to some increases. And also, one of the main factors driving down our state revenue is the loss of the tangible personal property reimbursement. That's a loss of over $500,000 per year, each year until it's all gone in fiscal year 25. So with flat foundation funding and loss in PPP reimbursement, that's what's driving our revenue down in the 5-year forecast. Next slide. So for 2020, our values increased by 2.25%, which was slightly higher than anticipated, which led to a little bit of growth in the out years for real estate tax. One thing that was really good news with this, back in November, I talked about how our commercial values had not been increasing, and you can see they had actually gone down by $3 million in 2019, which had caused an issue where the effective rate on several of our levies on the commercial side was the effective rate was the same as the voted rate, which meant there was no room for that levy to roll up. And if values would have went down more, that would have meant we would have lost revenue. So the good news with this valuation update was commercial values increased by over $5 million, which then meant that some of those levies actually rolled back down to where now the effective rate is below the voted rate again, which gives a little bit of wiggle room if values were to go down again. So that was great news to see. Next slide. Looking at expenditures, and again, this is where COVID really had a very significant impact. Our salaries for fiscal year 21 were down by $960,000. There was multiple impacts there. We did not add any new positions this year as we were, I guess, budgeting conservatively because there was so much uncertainty beginning the year with COVID. And we actually also reduced one admin position where we had a central office admin position that moved into a principal role, and we didn't replace that spot. Sub costs were down significantly this year due to remote learning, which reduced the need for subs across the district. Severance costs were down as we had less retirements than a typical year. We did use ESSER Round 1 funds in this fiscal year to help pay for salaries to offset the loss in state funding. So that was $380,000, I believe. And then in the out years of the forecast, which is part of the another big reason the forecast improved. So since compared to the November forecast, we now have ESSER Round 2 money, which is $1.034 million, which has been added to the forecast. And we also, while we don't have the exact allocation yet, we should know within the next few weeks, and we've been given indications from Ohio Department of Education of ESSER Round 3, which I anticipate to be over $2.2 million. So that's also another addition to the 5-year forecast that was an improvement. The benefits line actually improved, which was a little surprising because our insurance rates increased effective January 2021 by 13.8%, which is higher than what was projected. The projection was 10%. But the good news was that increase in insurance rates was more than offset by a refund by the Bureau of Workers' Compensation, so that the benefits line in total actually improved by $100,000. I would note in the projected years in the forecast for fiscal year 22 and beyond, I've got an assumption of a 10% increase for health insurance in each year. I would say that's that's one of the risk items in the forecast, because as we've seen, the number could be higher, but also there's a chance, it's entirely driven by claims. So if we have, a really good claims year or a couple of good claims claims years in a row, that 10% number could go down and have a significant positive effect on the forecast. So that's definitely a variable that we keep a close eye on. Our supplies expenses were down significantly due to COVID and more specifically due to remote learning. Classroom supplies and building supplies expenditures were significantly down, as well as bus fuel, as we weren't transporting as many kids. So in total, just in fiscal year 21 alone, expenditures were down by $1.3 million. Now, again, some of those things don't carry through the forecast because of, that remote learning, we're assuming that's not going to work. We're assuming back in fiscal year, going into fiscal year 22, that will, the sub costs will be back, the supply costs will be back, the bus fuel will be back, and then some, because we're seeing fuel rates go up significantly. But the savings and salaries, some of that will actually flow through the forecast, and you see a change to the positive for some of those salary expenses. Okay, next slide. So again, looking at our levy history, it's our last new money levy was passed back in 2008. Based on the current forecast, we would show the need for a new levy in 2023. So that's a 15-year period since our last new levy. And if you look back prior to that, it was a 10-year stretch. So we went from 10 years to a new levy. Now we're looking at 15 years to a new levy. If you remember back in November, we were more likely projecting a 2022 levy date. So this was good news. With some of these changes to the forecast, we're able to most likely push that back by a year, back to 2023. Next slide. So looking at the big picture for the forecast, taking those changes in revenues and expenditures, fiscal year 21, the bottom line increased by $3.7 million. As I noted, that the ESSER funds being included in fiscal years 22 through 24 was a big improvement to the forecast. And in the real estate assumptions with the increase in valuation, increased that real estate line slightly. There's still a lot of uncertainty around state revenue. I think that the fiscal year 22 assumption is probably pretty close. I wouldn't say it's conservative, and I really think that's probably where it's going to be. But there are 2 new biennial budgets that will impact this 5-year forecast. So obviously that's an area where things could change significantly. And I would note that right now we're basically on a guarantee, not a formula. And what's been proposed so far with the governor's budget is also basically a guarantee, not a formula. And what that means is you don't get funding based on your students. So if our number of students goes up, that doesn't necessarily change our funding. So that's obviously a concern. Looking at another risk factor of the forecast would be enrollment growth. As Diane mentioned, we're seeing apartments being pushed and built in the city. The forecast does not assume significant enrollment growth, but it does assume slight growth. I've assumed there's an assumption of adding 2 staff per year, but there's no assumption in there for a new building or the cost that it would take to staff a new building and that kind of thing. So if we were to get significant enrollment, that would significantly change the forecast. And finally, we've talked a little bit about this before as well. The main issue I see with the forecast is on the revenue side, where we're seeing flat revenue and or declining revenue. What that creates is the need to find an increase in revenue in some way, which leads to us becoming what I call a levy cycle district, where you see most Central Ohio school districts are on the ballot every 4 years, give or take, because they're not getting increases in state revenue. Real estate taxes remain relatively flat because of House Bill 920. So the only way to get revenue growth is through levies. Obviously, we want to avoid that if possible, but that's the way the forecast looks right now due to lack of state revenue growth. That's all for me. Is there any questions?
I would point out, I know you shared this with the Finance Committee meeting, or with the Finance Committee earlier this week. Didn't have a lot of Finance Committee members there, but I think it's nice to know that there are some community members who have been a part of the committee for a long time, who've had a chance to look this over. And I don't really recall a lot of questions.
We did talk about the levy and the revenue issues, and we talked about just basically sharing that the committee felt comfortable with the assumptions in the forecast and felt that they were reasonable.
And I go back to when we came up with our cash policy, what a benefit that is for all of us to be able to know, what those requirements are, and to be able to look up at that 5-year forecast and feel comfortable that we're staying on top of our responsibility to manage the finances of the district. So, and I really am grateful for, all of the assumptions that you share with us, and being so detail oriented and looking at all the factors out there. And like the use of the ESSER funds to offset some of our general operating costs has really been a benefit for our students in the long run. So this will be on the agenda next month for our approval. So if there are any questions that anyone has, any clarification that you'd like, please reach out to Todd or right now.
So that last bullet point about the possibility of a levy cycle, that's clearly looking out past this 5-year forecast, which means it's obviously very difficult to know, but that's sort of a trend that you're concerned about. If that were to happen, are you saying that it could be a 4-year cycle like some of these other districts, or could it be 5 or 6-year cycle, or is it just too hard to say? But
like you say, there are a lot of factors that could impact it, but the issue would be if the factors that are in place right now, such as real estate tax that doesn't grow, state funding that's relatively flat, our TPP is going away, all those things stay in place, then yes, based on those factors, we would be a levy cycle, and again, probably every 4 years or so. Now, again, if state funding were to start to grow, if it's significant growth, maybe we stay off a levy cycle. If it's, modest growth, maybe that's able to push it from a 4-year levy cycle to a 5 or 6 year levy cycle. A lot of factors, could change that. But based on current factors, that's the way it would look to be pointing towards, like that 4-year type levy cycle.
This could be, Sue, we had our training meeting and we talked about, trying to be more intentional about talking about the big picture and talking about our philosophy and values and so on. And this could be the kind of thing that we might want to talk about regularly. Like, how do we see ourselves as a district? Do we want to end up as a 4-year cycle? Do we want to do everything we can to avoid that?
Right.
And then if so, what kinds of things can we do, including, being in contact with the legislature and making sure they understand what's happening here.
Right. Well, and I think even just hearing about these plans, meeting with the other district superintendents about the virtual academy and sharing resources, I think that's one of the ways that you show our community, you show the state that we're always looking for ways to be creative with our finances and get the most out of them. So, a good point though.
One of the other factors, being a longtime resident and teacher, now board member, we have in the past had 5-year renewable levies, and those required additional votes at various times, created a lot of uncertainty for the school district in terms of their planning, took a lot of time, energy within the staff. There was a financial impact, money being raised in the community to support the information, getting information out about the levy, make sure people were educated as to what was happening. And it is nice to be able to sit here and know that we don't have a renewal coming up next year that we need to get before we even begin thinking about, the longer term cost. And so the fact that we've been able to get away from those 5-year renewals, I used to talk about them as being the, kind of the building blocks of our finances, and you have to go in and replace, those every once in a while. I really feel like we're much more stable. We have, even though there's a lot of uncertainty, not having a renewal coming up in the next year or two is certainly not, I think that's a stabilizing force. We have a better vision of what our obstacles, what our challenges are really going to be.
It kind of takes me back to when I first came to number 1 for student members, staff, everyone was talking money.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that we were always on the ballot. This understanding that every time we were out, money, right? So being able to get those off the table, if you will, has provided us, some coverage from voter fatigue, from misunderstanding, those types of things, and allowed us to communicate that larger message of what the school district is about.
Yeah. Well, going back before 2008, going back to 90, 91, along in there, we were building buildings, new elementary buildings, a new high school, and so forth. So in addition to operating funds, we were also asking for bond issues to be able to put up the buildings. And I think people have a difficult time sometimes understanding that the bond money is used to build the buildings. The operating funds are used to hire the teachers and staff and so forth to educate the kids. But, what they typically see is the school is asking for more money. And so, you know, there were times in my memory where we had a vote in the spring, we had another one in the fall on a couple of occasions, or we had a couple of times where we had two issues on the ballot at the same time. And now I think, as you pointed out, we're kind of in a better place in terms of understanding where we are, where we want to go, and how to get there, even though we know that there's some uncertainty and things could certainly change.
I agree, and I think I was just going to comment. Our spring newsletter, I think, did a really nice job of highlighting our finances and just the creative ways that we maximize the use of those resources. So, thank you, Todd. And again, if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to Todd. So for my board president report, Brian just alluded to the fact we had a workshop last week led by Dr. Kim Miller-Smith, who's the Senior Student Achievement Consultant for Ohio School Boards Association. And I thought it was really a great opportunity for us to discuss some of the themes from the book that we read, The Governance Core, and to think about ways that the board can be more intentional about positively impacting student achievement. So a couple takeaways from our conversations and comments at the workshop are that we're going to be planning additional workshops. The first one to focus on creating our board handbook that would include our updated protocols and a formal board member orientation process. And then we also talked about how our meetings are a great opportunity to highlight our district strategic plan. So for example, the board notes that we get each month cover the 4 areas of the strategic plan: student performance and learning, financial stability, safety, and community partnerships. And then the presentations at our board meetings generally align with at least one of those areas. And we can certainly call out how the presentations validate the fact that we have a plan and we're working the plan. Another takeaway was the reminder of our role as board members versus the role of our superintendent and treasurer. One example in the book used a boat analogy and said that the governance by the school board is steering the boat, and management, superintendent, treasurer, and staff, is rowing the boat. In other words, we have a strategic focus, and we hold Diane and Todd accountable for doing the strategic planning and work to carry out that district-wide strategy. So the updates we get throughout the month, the reports that we hear at our meetings provide the information we need or an opportunity for us to ask for more information to ensure that we're staying on course. Our mid and end of year evaluations are another chance to reflect on the work of the district and provide feedback to Diane and Todd. And as elected officials, we know we're also accountable to our community, which doesn't necessarily mean that we can fix or answer all the questions or make everyone happy. But we do know that our families and community members are such vital partners in the education of our kids, especially over this past year. So we're committed to making decisions that are going to provide opportunities, resources, relevant experiences for all of our students. And our workshop, it was a chance for us to reflect, but I think more importantly, to recognize what we have here in Marysville, which is outstanding, innovative, and collaborative staff members, students, and community partners. So looking back over this past year, I really feel like we've weathered this COVID storm, and that we're coming out with a renewed sense of purpose, with new tools, and just a sincere gratitude for the extraordinary efforts of everyone. And we really thank Kim Miller-Smith, I think, for doing a great job leading our workshop. And I just, after the workshop, I had a chance to talk to each one of you, and I just felt like it was just really a nice opportunity, and I think it gave us all this renewed sense of purpose, and like Brian said, the opportunity to really be intentional in our meetings, to let our community know that we take this seriously. So, and then just my normal reminders: Board Leadership Institute is coming up next week on April 23rd and 24th. So hopefully everybody has registered for that. And then I would like to schedule that the first follow-up work session for us to be working on our board handbook and revising our protocols and board orientation. So if everyone could let me know of dates that would not work for you in May and June, I would appreciate that. And then I can send out a couple of possible dates for us to get together. And finally, I attended the Chamber of Commerce board meeting this morning. CEO Eric Phillips talked about workforce development and the upcoming job career signing day on May 4th, which we just got an invitation for that. It's a really great idea. You know, they always have signing days for athletes, and now we're going to have signing days for students who are starting their careers. And the next business impact breakfast is going to be held on April 29th. I'm going to be out of town that day. It's going to be at Memorial Pavilion, and the program is going to have a local career tech superintendents panel. So Dr. Smith will be there, Tolls Tech, and Tri Rivers, I think. So those superintendents will be there. So anyone's welcome to attend, and I believe those are at 8 o'clock. So again, at Memorial Health Pavilion. So hopefully someone will be able to attend. That's it. Oh, one other thing. I was going to start out with this. Todd just gave this to me today, but our Marysville School Board has received a certificate of appreciation in recognition of our continuing support for the Marysville FFA chapter. So especially after seeing all of those state qualifiers, we've got a lot to be proud of with our FFA program, and they're grateful for the support that we give them. So that's it for my report. Legislative report, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Hopefully all of you received my report. The first item is the one that is on the minds of most legislators and every school board member, treasurer, and superintendent of the state, and that's the House Bill 1, the Fair School Funding Plan. This week there was a meeting, a Zoom and YouTube meeting with Senator Reneke and board members, superintendents, treasurers from the 26th Senate District had an opportunity to talk with him. I thought that the meeting went very well. I thought it was a very productive meeting in that we learned from the senator the concerns that were on his mind, and we'll be trying to provide him information about those concerns and how House Bill 1 will attempt to address those. House Bill 1 is a completely new funding system for the schools in the state of Ohio. It's a product of over 3 years of research and countless hours of vetting and questioning. Senator Reneke supported this bill last fall. It was House Bill 305 last year. He voted in favor of that. It is currently co-sponsored by Representative Tracy Richardson, and obviously she voted for it last year. The bill has gotten a lot of support in the House, and hopefully we'll be able to generate support in the Senate. To help that process along, I asked Sue if she would join me in asking the Union County Chamber of Commerce Legislative Committee for a letter in support of House Bill 1. And we had an opportunity to meet with the committee, and I thought we had a great discussion. We exchanged information. I understand, and maybe you can speak as to where that request for the letter is. And I'm surprising you a little bit, but
no, that's quite all right. That's quite all right. Yeah. So anyways, like Dick said, we met with the legislative committee, and then at the chamber, the board of trustees meeting this morning, there was actually a letter that they asked the board to approve. And the letter didn't specifically say they supported House Bill 1, but they are very much in support of the fair school funding idea. And so the original letter had outlined 4 items that they still had concerns with. And it was mainly, a better understanding of where the funds were going to come from, how it was going to support technical schools, what would happen if the economy had a downturn. And the last one was they wanted to link performance measures with the receipt of this funding. And when I saw that, I'm like, oh, I know that was one thing. Like, now wait a second. We're all interested in performance measures, but to link them to funding is really a punitive concept. Like if you're not doing well, you don't deserve the funds. And I explained to them that every district deserves and needs fair and adequate funding. And to link it to performance measures is really counterintuitive. If your car doesn't work, you're not going to stop putting gas in or stop going to get it fixed. Or, you usually end up spending more money when something's not fixed. So I asked them to consider taking out that bullet point and not connecting performance with funding. And so they did that and sent out a revised letter, and the board, they talked about making those revisions and the board approved that. So today, letters went out to Speaker of the House Cup, to Tracy Richardson, to Senator Reineke, and also to Senator Huffman, who's the leader of the Senate. So we're very appreciative. We talked about our strong partnership with the chamber, and they understand the value of good schools, and they appreciate everything that Marysville District does as well. So,
And speaking to that, the criticisms that I have heard, the ones that were raised by the chamber and also by Senator Reineke, really didn't speak to the formula that is created in House Bill 1. Everybody seems very supportive of how it's structured because it directs dollars to follow students. And Todd was pointing out in his presentation that we're on a guarantee of flat funding at this point. And so if we had student growth under House Bill 1 procedures and things, our incomes would go up because we would receive additional funding for each and every student that we get. And I think that's one of the most positive aspects of this particular legislation. In a very related part, House Bill 110, which is the state biennium budget, is working through the state legislature in the House Finance Committee. Just in the last day or two, integrated House Bill 1 into the state budget. And so it's expected that the budget will pass sometime later this month and then be sent to the Senate. But there's relative assurance now that this discussion about House Bill 1, the Cupp-Patterson plan and so forth is going to shift over to the Senate. And so fingers crossed, we hope that gets through. We've tried to answer the funding question. The bill is phased in. For the proposal is that it be phased in over 6 years. The state in each of the last 10 years has increased the amount of funding for education by about $280 million. And to implement this funding plan going forward, it would require that 280 million plus an additional 208 million. And that additional money is believed to exist. The state revenues have thus far been ahead of the projections. There are some places where there's duplication, and so that money can be drawn in to help fill the gaps. And one of the prominent areas is the state's rainy day fund has been maxed out as to what is required, and the state legislature's been putting $400 million into the rainy day fund. So there would be some funds there. So hopefully the Senate will concur with the House and see the value in this, and we'll move forward. I've listed some other things that are in the budget for you to look at. In terms of legislative issues, there are a couple that I would, we've also talked about the state report card. There are two bills that I would highlight. House Bill 200 that would eliminate the A through F letter grades and create what I believe is a more reasonable and rational evaluation of school districts. It still needs some work. Over in the Senate, Senate Bill 145 would revise the current system. It originally called for maintaining the A through F system, and the sponsor of the bill, when he talked to the committee it was assigned to, said that he would like to see a change to a 5-star based system. So certainly a lot of conversation about the accountability piece, which is another issue. I look at it as a separate issue from the funding, as Sue had talked about. There's some other bills, two that I'll highlight. House Bill 207 that would increase the income qualification for the homestead exemption from $30,000 to $37,500. So that would impact some taxpayers in our community, and one that might make teachers smile a little bit. Senate Bill 120 to increase the personal income tax reduction for educator expenses from $250 to $1,000. So that would, we know that teachers are, buying things for their classrooms, things that their students need, and this would certainly help to alleviate some of that. So I added another 13 pages worth of information for you if you have nothing else to do. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And thanks for being on that committee with Senator Reineke. I think that was a lot of time and did a lot of really good work. So next, Ms. Powers, if you're still there, do we have a safety and drug committee report?
There is no drug safety report tonight. We should be back on with another meeting for next month.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, then now I would accept the motion to approve the draft minutes from our March 18th regular meeting and our April 8th special meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Savage,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. Any comments, corrections, anything like that? If not, then roll call, please.
Ms. Savage,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Luke,
Yes.
Ms. Powers,
Yes.
Ms. Devine.
Yes, motion carries. Next, I would accept a motion to approve the treasurer action items.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith.
Second.
Sorry, Amy, Brian just beat you out. This is second by Mr. Luke.
That's what that lag does to you, see?
I know,
Just
I
knocks you
know.
out.
Todd, anything that you'd like to point out?
Yeah, a couple items on the appropriations. The big thing that jumps out there is the ESSER round 2, so that $1.034 million. We're appropriating that. I don't anticipate we'll spend even a small portion of that this year, but just going ahead and appropriating it so that it'll be appropriated and then it'll be available next year as well.
What are the time? I mean, when do you have to have that spent?
So ESSER round 1, we have until I believe September of 2022, I think. Until
Okay.
that, so we've got plenty of time even for that. I believe ESSER 2 goes until September of 2023,
Okay,
and then ESSER 3 is still unknown.
okay, thank you.
Also, note that donation from the Applegate family for the stadium project that's been completed. The pledges keep coming in. And then also I would note on the cash flow, There's a variance on the line 1 and 2 for the real estate tax and the public utility personal property tax, where it looks like it's well under projections. That's just due to timing. That revenue actually was projected to hit in March, actually came in April, and actually the deficit is going to be more than made up for, as I noted in my presentation, actually comes in higher than the projection.
Any questions for Todd? Okay, then roll call, please.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Luke, yes, Ms. Savage,
Yes.
Ms. Powers,
Yes.
Ms. Devine.
Yes, motion carries. Okay, next I would accept a motion to approve a certified contract for the second one is for Paul Devine.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Luke,
Second.
second by Ms. Savage. I'll give the next one to you, Amy. Okay, we'll wait a little bit longer. Okay.
That's okay. You're good.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Luke, yes. Ms. Savage,
Yes.
Ms. Powers,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Devine.
Abstain. Motion carries. Next, I would accept a motion to approve a certified contract for Emily Savage.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Powers,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. Roll call.
Ms. Powers,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Luke, yes. Ms. Savage,
Abstain.
Ms. Devine.
Yes, motion carries. Next, I would accept a motion to approve the superintendent items.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Ms. Powers. Diane, any comments?
I would just highlight a few things. I wanted to note Tina Sharaf, our transportation director, is retiring in the fall. And so that's been submitted. We've really appreciated Tina's leadership. We'll also start a fairly early search, so we may have the opportunity to have some shadowing take place before Tina would leave. And I would also highlight Karen Highland, math teacher at the high school. He spent a lot of time in Marysville schools as a student and then came back as a teacher. And I can even speak from a parent perspective of the impact she's made on kids. So wish her the best of luck in her new journey and excited for her to start that as well. You have supplementals, just a reminder, the non-renewal on here is our annual non-renewal. So nothing alarming there. We have some, I would, on the salary schedule, you'll note one of them is for the 2021 school year, which we do know this is this school year. However,
Yes.
we neglected to put it on the agenda. So we understand that there's no issue on putting on now. It's just an oversight on our part starting the year. You'll also see the 21-22 increases, obviously for next school year. We have several first read policies. If you have any questions of those, you can let me know. Dick also sits on that committee as well. You'll see a lot of those, again, are just to get things realigned. I know Mrs. Devine, you had a question about kind of the operations side of that preschool program.
Yes.
And I think Jonathan has some clarity for that.
Yes, if you
Okay.
did, I looked and the wording was changed in there and it made more sense to me because the detail that we had was confusing when I read the wording on the actual.
It was almost like a little negative kind of
Yes,
thing.
right,
Yeah.
right. So now I thought it makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah,
You also see it, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I would point out that two of the or four of these are rescinding
Right,
provisions that we enacted because of COVID, and it's kind of nice to be able to rescind those.
right, right.
Also, there's an easement for a potential community across the street from Bunzell Middle School. It's my understanding that previous leadership had kind of committed to this, but it was never of interest until the past couple years. We've had several conversations, but now it's fully come to fruition. So we're obviously making good on that. So that would allow them to be able to connect through our equipment. So it should not impact school operations. They will be cognizant of that moving forward. So that is on there. New boiler system at Edgewood. I would also highlight there is a trip for next year to Disney. There are several COVID provisions. So if COVID would linger on and create some obstacles, there are provisions for the band and choir to not be held responsible, or and there's lots of safety protocols embedded in that as well. I think that's it.
Yeah, you went through on the personnel section the retirements of Tina Sherrock, Paula Nickel, Karen Highland, and I had an opportunity to work with all three of them at various times in my career, and we are losing some real talented people. And like I think everybody in our school district, they always put the students first, and everything that they did, they have each one of them has gone over and above numerous times, and to make sure that the kids were taken care of and that things were done in the right way in our school district. So I want to personally thank all three of them for their service to our community and most importantly to the students of our district.
I think we all feel the same way.
Absolutely.
I know I have,
Yes.
I've got Miss Highland taught at least one of my kids, and I know that they really enjoyed having her as a teacher. And then I just think about this last year with Tina and Paula, and cannot imagine the juggling that they've had to do with transportation. It's just and anytime you'd see them, they have a smile on their face, and I know Tina's out there driving. I don't know, does Paula drive too? They all drive out there.
Over there.
Yeah, so we can't thank them enough. And I also noticed that we're starting to see a couple new hires on there.
Yes.
Which is exciting,
Yes.
Welcoming some new people to Marysville and a few just normal resignations, and we just always thank anybody for the time and effort, the work that they've done while they're here at Marysville, and I hope they leave with good memories, and maybe we'll see them in the future. So
hopefully they came and were able to enhance their skills, and that whatever reason that's taking them away is one that works out for them.
exactly. Yep. Anyone have any questions about the easement or the boiler replacement, anything like that?
On the easement, that's not going to cause future issues or problems in terms of the property in that area. Is that correct?
I think actually it should be kind of beneficial.
It should actually benefit the district, because then instead of us being the end of the line and responsible for everything there, it actually adds entities that would all be additionally responsible if there repairs were needed or those kinds of things. But there should be no disruption to the school.
Mm-hmm.
Did notice too that they're supposed to that the blacktop would get fixed after they were done driving over things, so that'll be kind of nice knowing that that's already kind of covered that way. So okay, if no other questions or comments, I'd accept a roll call, please.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Powers?
Yes.
Mr. Luke?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Ms. Devine.
Yes, motion carries. Over now to comments and questions from board members. So we'll start with you, Mrs. Powers.
It just didn't want to let me come in there for a minute. Thank you
Okay.
very much. I'm very glad I got to attend tonight. Thank you for being flexible for me to be on Zoom. And I will see you guys next month.
Great, thanks. Mr. Luke.
I'm still a little distracted thinking about how a 5-star report card is better than ABCDF. But maybe we can take that up next time. Or maybe
Yeah.
the Senate will have figured it out by then.
Yeah, well, I'll try to get the senator here to explain it.
It tells quite a story, doesn't it?
So I feel like this has been a very good meeting. I really appreciate recognizing the student achievement at the beginning and hearing about the summer school and the prom and some of the financial news that's really good that we didn't necessarily know we would hear this year, and the summer school. So there's a lot of exciting things coming up, and thank you for everybody for presenting those.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Thank you again for the presentation related to what we're doing over the summer school, the different grade levels. I think it's really important to engage students in all different kinds of activities throughout the summer and let them kind of pick and choose what can help them grow there. So I appreciate that. I think in one of our fall meetings, either September or October, I really want to see prom and graduation this year. And I'm so happy to be seeing prom and graduation this year. It may not look exactly like it does traditionally, but it is here, and the students are going to be able to enjoy those events. I also wanted to call out the spring newsletter here, which I thought you guys did was an excellent job, both by Diane talking about the return to full-time learning and Todd explaining where the money was spent that came into the district, whether it's federal dollars or state dollars, where it went to help support our community. I think there's a nice, concise explanation. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the 5-year forecast. It was wonderful to see good news in that forecast. So thank you.
Mr. Smith.
I'd like to point out in our notes, Raymond has a before and after school program. They're supporting students with reading and math. Our leadership in transportation is retiring, but before they leave, they're providing the necessary transportation above and beyond the normal bus routes. So I want to thank the people that are involved up at Raymond for running that after school program, and also thank the transportation department. This is just one small example of how they go out of the way to make sure that things happen for kids. I really want to thank Marcus and everybody in the IT department. They were the host for the meeting with Senator Reneke. It encompassed a large portion of the state, but that went off without a hitch. I got a lot of notes, a number of notes from people. Really appreciated the quality of the performance and the service that they received from our IT department. So thank you very much for that. It's nice to get that kind of support, and I know that you deliver that, you and the others in the IT department deliver that to each and every one of our teachers. Much appreciated. I'm excited for prom and graduation. I really like the plans for both. I think it's, as I mentioned earlier, it kind of threads the needle of trying to do as much as we can in a normal fashion and still make it reasonable. I had earlier suggested in a conversation about this that maybe the girls could wear hoop skirts in order to maintain social distancing, and that doesn't appear that that's going to be necessary. So,
It was an appreciated comment.
yes.
I like the idea of the colored bands though instead, so that's still kind of a nice little creative twist.
Yeah. I'd point out Tri Academy has 13 new students, and they've started personalized schedules that will help them recover the credits they need and hopefully achieve all the graduation standards or whatever their individual goals are. And I would like to mention that it is really nice to be able to meet and see all of you. I have, and I know others also share this, just an emotional moment when I think about some of the things that I used to take for granted, just the most common, ordinary encounters that, you know, where I think the mask wearing, I think the discipline to socially distance in our buildings. I looked at the graph on our COVID stance, and you know what we're doing inside the building is keeping kids safe. That number is down. What's happening outside of the school is where the COVID issues really exist, and I feel just really grateful that we've been able to keep the environment within the schools, even in this meeting, wearing masks and we're 10 feet apart or whatever it is. I'm really grateful for that because I think that's going to get us through this and get us back to where we can turn the kids loose in the gym next year for prom. So maybe.
So fingers crossed. Okay. Todd, any comments?
Nothing to add.
Diane?
I would just like to congratulate all the students we recognized tonight. Like you, it's always really cool to see their faces, but I get why we can't. Brian, I'd piggyback on your comment about the accountability systems. I think that both systems that are being considered are, for lack of a better phrase, just band-aiding a problem that is not, it's not transforming the way in which we think about accountability. And you can't continue to push accountability factors the way in a traditional system and expect any change behavior in my mind. So I would encourage state legislators to really think transformatively about how we can get equity and improvement and learning for all kids, regardless of where you live in the state of Ohio. We fare well in Marysville, and that's great. But when you look at that larger landscape, I think there's a call for action to do things differently, and I hope that they can do that.
I couldn't agree more with that. You know, I just think about how here in Marysville, we've changed our instructional model so much over the past 5, 6, 7 years. And I think that performance measure just needs the same kind of change, the same kind of thoughtful look at really what are we trying to accomplish with this? And how can we create something that is going to really let people know how districts are growing their kids and where are the shortcomings and what can we do to support that, and you know, all of those kinds of things. So yeah, good comment there. I'll also say how proud I am of all those state qualifiers, and also wanted to shout out our congratulations to our high school principal, Mr. Tom Cochran, who's going to be receiving an honorary state FFA degree. It's the highest honor that the Ohio FFA Association can bestow on any person. And of course, not sure if we recognized that Mrs. Sherry Anderson was I think we recognized last month, but we can say again, she's a great ag teacher. With those building notes, I also wanted to comment when you talked about Tri Academy, they actually, those new students, it's a new class, a T2 class where they don't attend Tri Academy, kind of a hybrid with the high school or something. And I thought, what a great, I just love this collaboration between our staff. And again, that focus on what does every child need, and if they don't really fit at Tri-Academy, but they're struggling at the high school, what can we do to meet them where they are? So just another really good example of how we're personalizing our learning. I want to shout out, I noticed at Maven, they said they have 55 students participating in their tutoring options, and really want to thank all of our teachers, aides, and reading intervention specialists for volunteering their time. And let's see, I think that's about it. So now I would accept a motion to go into executive session, and there's not going to be any action taken after the executive session. So there will be no need for people to sit there and wait and see if we're going to be doing any kind of vote. So at this point, I would accept a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of ORC 121.22G number 1 and 4 to consider the employment of public employees and preparing for conducting or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith. Second. Second by Ms. Savage. Roll call.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Luke,
Yes.
Ms. Powers?
She may have left.
Yes.
Go, there she is. Good. Okay.
Ms. Devine?
Yes. Motion carries, and we're in executive session at 7:56. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of this lovely, beautiful event.